Hey everyone, it's Bo back once again with another cult movie review. In this video, I'm going to be taking a look at the 1989 NBC television pilot, LA Takedown. Written and directed by Michael Mann, this project would ultimately become the precursor to the 1995 movie Heat. Before we get into it, guys, if you haven't already, please do hit the subscribe button. It's greatly appreciated. So in 1988, NBC commissioned Michael Mann to produce a brand new television series for the network. At the time, Mann's TV show Crime Story had just been cancelled after 2 seasons. Michael Mann's other television show, Miami Vice, was winding down and heading into its final season. Both Crime Story and Miami Vice had tremendous production costs and were not bringing in the high ratings needed to justify continuing making them. While Mann's relationship with NBC was a little strained at this time, NBC still had faith in Michael Mann to create the next big TV show for them. For the new project, Mann decided to use an old screenplay he first wrote back in 1979 entitled Heat. The screenplay itself was based on a true story Mann was told firsthand by former Chicago police officer Chuck Adamson, co-creator of Crime Story. Mann felt that it would make a good pilot episode and set up for a new television show. This time around, Mann decided to change up his production locations and use Los Angeles, California as the new base, deeming LA Robbery Homicide Division a better setup for a TV crime show. In May 1989, Mann and his crew began the 19-day production in downtown Los Angeles. Unlike his 2 previous TV productions, this time around Michael Mann decided to take the helm as director to produce the first episode. In terms of the cast, LA Takedown featured an ensemble of notable actors and former Miami Vice guest stars. The late actor Scott Plank was cast in the lead role as Detective Vincent Hanna. Plank had previously appeared on both Miami Vice and Crime Story, so he was very much on Michael Mann's radar at the time. Actress Ellie Puett, who had previously starred in the season 2 Miami Vice episode Junk Love, was cast as Vincent's wife, Lillian. Actor Xander Berkeley, who had previously starred in a season 4 episode of Miami Vice, was cast as the crazed criminal Waingro. The film also stars actors Daniel Baldwin, Juan Fernandez, and a young Michael Rooker, who was cast as Detective Bosco. This would have been the second time Rooker had been involved with Michael Mann, having previously appeared very briefly in the pilot for Crime Story in 1986. As for the music, Miami Vice Season 5 composer Tim Truman was given the job to score the 90-minute pilot. Truman, who had already replaced composer Jan Hammer in Miami Vice's final season, clearly had impressed Michael Mann to get rehired for LA Takedown. Unlike Jan Hammer, Tim Truman's work was more guitar-based, a little bit more kind of rough around the edges, and it brought a more kind of realistic, gritty style to proceedings. So the story follows Detective Vincent Hanna and his team trying to capture a group of career criminals responsible for a violent robbery that takes place at the start of the film. The group responsible was led by the methodical Patrick McLaren, played by Alex MacArthur. Teaming up with McLaren in this crew were gangsters Michael Cerrito and Chris Shirelis. They were played by actors Vincent Gustafero and Peter Dobson, respectively. So the film begins with this intense heist taking place. The gang are after financial bearer bonds and enlist Alexander Berkeley's character, Waingro, to help assist them with the job. So the group ram down this armoured vehicle before eventually killing 3 security guards. Now, this was a professional crew making moves on specific targets. Cop killing and murder was never their intention, but Waingro loses his cool after one of the guards keeps smirking at him directly. This Waingro character, played by Alexander Berkeley, was this loose cannon and clearly on the edge before the job even begun. Anyways, before you know it, bang, he shoots the guard dead, and all the plans start falling apart. Another cop then gets involved and tries to wrestle away Cerrito's gun, and in the process knocks off his mask. With his true identity exposed, Cerrito basically had no choice but to blast the other cops away, leaving no witnesses. Now, I ain't justifying murder, of course, but you can understand the thought process behind him suddenly just wanting to execute the cops. So the group are able to get the bearer bonds and they make their getaway, but even they knew that with the 3 guards dead, that was only going to draw more attention and galvanize the police force to go out and find them. Now, as I said, this was an intense, gritty sequence, brilliantly shot by Michael Mann. The crew smashed through this armoured vehicle as it drove through an underpass. It was an impressive sequence and a great way to kick off your pilot for a potential TV show. One thing I found interesting that I wanted to bring up was that the group were wearing these black hockey masks to protect their identities. I noticed similar masks had previously been used as a disguise in an episode of Miami Vice. Specifically in the season 5 episode To Have and to Hold, a group of mercenaries are ordered to carry out a murder and show up wearing these hockey masks. It's a minor thing, but I wanted to point out some of the overlap this film had with Mann's other projects. So the bearer bonds are taken, but the job didn't exactly go to plan. We get a follow-up scene where we see the crew sitting in a diner. McLaren, the ringleader, is pissed and can't even bear to look at Waingro. Anyways, Waingro gets his cut of the money and is told to disappear. News of the 3 dead guards quickly spreads and Hannah begins to investigate. Hannah and his team actually visit the crime scene, and with all the dialogue that's said, it's clear to see that the Vincent Hanna character knows what he's talking about. He quickly establishes that the crew were on a timer and that someone else had to have leaked the information on the police vehicle. How else would the crew have known about it otherwise? As the investigation continues, the remaining gang members plan their next job, a bank heist. McLaren makes it clear though that this will be the final job that they do. They'll all make loads of money, retire and head off into the sunset. Besides the main storyline with the gang and the investigation, director Michael Mann added 2 additional romantic subplots involving Hannah and McLaren. Throughout the film, we see Detective Hannah and his wife Lillian have relationship issues due to the pressures of Hannah's job. Lillian felt like she came second in their relationship and wanted Hannah to change. Separately to all of this, McLaren meets a woman called Edie, played by actress Laura Harrington. The bank robbery is set in motion, it's fast approaching, the police are closing in on the crew, and McLaren needed to stay focused on the job. We see the character quickly find himself falling for Edie, and at the same time not revealing his true identity as a career criminal. McLaren gives this spiel to Edie that he's a salesman, that he sells swimming pools or something like that, and those lies eventually get found out. This Edie woman falls head over heels for McLaren and basically believes everything he tells her. You know, when I take a step back, I personally would have preferred less of the romance, but the way I saw it, I guess this was Michael Mann's way to humanize the characters and show both Hannah and McLaren were two sides of the same coin. Both were dedicated to their work and both had trouble sharing their private lives with their significant others. The bank heist that we see later on in the film I thought was executed very well. Of course, it pales in comparison to the scene that we saw in Heat, but for the limited time and money that they had, I have to give it high praise. So the crew enter the bank with their getaway driver waiting outside. Within seconds, they take out the guards and begin raiding the vault. McLaren actually scales the countertop, machine gun in hand, telling the screaming customers not to interfere. We get this high-angle tracking shot following McLaren as he walks across. I just thought that was a brilliant visual. Meanwhile, back at the precinct, Vincent and his team receive a tip-off about the robbery going down and immediately head to the bank. We then get this prolonged gunfire exchange between the crew and the police outside the bank. Bullets are flying everywhere, people are getting taken out. On one side you have McLaren, machine gun in hand, sunglasses on, firing away at the cops. It's like, wow. On the other side, you have Hannah fiercely defending his team with his own semi-automatic. It really was an awesome action set piece that saw McLaren and an injured Cherilise narrowly escape. And just when I'm thinking about it, I've seen all of the Miami Vice episodes, I've seen the whole of the 2 seasons of Crime Story, and obviously we get a lot of gun exchange, gun battles, gunfights happening in both television shows. But when I think about LA Takedown and its prolonged gun battle, it really was the first time that we'd seen anything quite like that in a Michael Mann production. I want to mention cinematographer Roland Garcia here for a moment. Now, LA Takedown does feature some really nice shots throughout its 90-minute runtime. Overall, the pilot retains a more gritty, low-budget vibe, and I can't say it's a beautiful looking film, but given the time constraints, I thought Garcia did a decent job providing some good cinematography where he could. There's actually one specific visual in LA Takedown towards the end of the film that I truly loved. We see a palm tree on fire in the foreground very briefly. It's quite a unique sight, and there's no real explanation, it's just this random fire, but visually it looked awesome. I have to mention Scott Plank's portrayal as Detective Vincent Hanna. Now, I've only seen a limited amount of Scott Plank's work over the years, but from what I have seen, I would say this is perhaps one of his best performances. The Hanna character is this big shot, up-and-coming detective, fully committed to his life in law enforcement. Confidence is rooted in a sense of self-worth, while arrogance manifests itself into an inflated sense of superiority. I felt Scott Plank delivered the perfect balance for his role as Hannah in LA Takedown. Watching LA Takedown, I couldn't help notice that the pilot shared the same tone and vibe as Miami Vice's final season. Visually and aesthetically, LA Takedown felt like a genuine spin-off from Miami Vice. And I think a lot of that may come down to the fact that former Miami Vice composer Tim Truman was in charge of scoring this specific project. Truman actually reused some of the Miami Vice themes that we heard in LA Takedown. Perhaps Michael Mann was planning some sort of crossover down the line between the two shows, similar to what we saw in the CSI franchise, but that's just wishful thinking on my part. So LA Takedown aired on August 27th, 1989 on the NBC network, but was ultimately not commissioned for a full season. From all of the information I could find online, it would seem that NBC had major reservations about Scott Plank in the lead role as Vincent Hanna. NBC were happy to broadcast the pilot and even commission the show for a full season, but going forward, they wanted Scott Plank removed from the show as the lead character. Now, I couldn't tell specifically if NBC wanted Plank to be fired from the show or just wanted him demoted into a supporting role. Still, NBC were adamant that they couldn't commission the show unless changes were made. Michael Mann outright refused to appease NBC, and LA Takedown was left as a one-off TV movie. Besides its broadcast in 1989, LA Takedown had never been repeated on American television, nor did it ever receive an official DVD release in North America. The film, however, was released on DVD in European markets, and that's how I subsequently found the film many years ago. As for the DVD itself, it was a bare bones release with no special features. And I have to say, the film's actual quality was pretty much a straight VHS rip. You know, it's been over 20 years since the DVD's release, and I'm kind of surprised that there's been no upgrade to Blu-ray for LA Takedown. And so, dislikes for 1989's LA Takedown. My main dislike would have to be Laura Harrington's portrayal as Edie. I genuinely thought that Harrington was not captivating enough and unable to match the standards of her peers. Given that this was a Michael Mann production and the casting director was Bonnie Timmerman, I was kind of surprised that Harrington even landed the role. I just thought she was very one-dimensional, and I couldn't help but think that this may have been a last-minute casting decision. I don't want to be too harsh, but I do think she was a weak part of LA Takedown, and I just didn't buy her chemistry between her character and McLaren. Yeah, thinking about it, actress Amy Brenneman did a much better job with her portrayal as Edie in Heat. Another dislike for me would be the Juan Fernandez character Torena, who appeared in the film. He's basically a snitch helping Hannah with his investigations. And the Torena character was very much like the Easy Moreno character from Miami Vice, feeding the detectives inside information. I could see they were setting up the Torena character to bring some sort of comic relief to proceedings. Juan Fernandez was always stronger playing a villain like he did in Miami Vice as Borrasca. In LA Takedown, he's underutilized as this low-key loser, and yeah, I just didn't like it. My final dislike would be the lack of Michael Rooker in this movie. Michael Rooker is a great actor, and his talent is sadly wasted here in LA Takedown. Now, maybe there were additional scenes that were removed from the final cut. I don't know for sure, but either way, it was a missed opportunity not to showcase Michael Rooker's acting abilities. And so ratings for LA Takedown. Gonna be rating this movie a strong 6.5 out of 10. Undeniably, Heat from 1995 is a far greater movie than this project could ever hope to be. But as a standalone piece, I honestly thought it was a brilliant television pilot. And the more I think about it, I really believe that this was actually a missed opportunity on NBC's part. I really believe they should have at least given the show a full season, to see what Michael Mann could have come up with. And if you think about the TV landscape at the time, Miami Vice had just finished, so there was a huge void that needed to be filled. The LA Takedown pilot had tons of potential, yet this whole Scott Plank actor dispute ended any further plans. It's a great pilot and definitely worth watching. And in many ways, you could kind of consider LA Takedown as a 1980s film noir. In classic noir style, there must be a woman in the background to affect the course of events, which we also see here in LA Takedown. So yeah, if you haven't watched it already, definitely do so. I recommend it. And if you're a Michael Mann fan, it's a must watch. Anyways, I've been rambling on too long. Thanks so much for watching, guys. That's all from me today. Hope you enjoyed the video, and as I mentioned, if you haven't subscribed already, please do. It means a great deal, as I'm trying to grow the channel. Alright guys, take care. All the best. See you soon.